Hi, my name is Nicole. I'm an educator with Glassbox Barbershop, and this is my model Lucy, and today we're doing a mid-length haircut. I'm going to start by sectioning the top from the back and sides and soaking it. So as we start, Lucy actually has really thick hair. It's quite light, which will help us with weight lines, because you tend to not see them as much. So as I soak Lucy's hair, I'm really starting to look at her head shape and assess the hair and how I'm going to take my first section. Really making sure the whole head is saturated. I want the hair soaked. Now that the hair is soaked, I'm going to begin by taking my first section. Combing everything back. I'm beginning to take my first section through the parietal ridge. Hanging onto that piece, slicing in through the back. Gathering all these hairs so I don't lose control, and concluding the end of my section. Remembering to always hang on to the hair that I've separated at the top. If I begin to see hairs that are falling out of place, that merely explains that it's not supposed to be in that section. So I'm going to go in and just sort of edit the little hairs that don't make it and place them towards the side of the head. That's an easy indication to let you know that your section might be a little too wide. Gathering all this hair nice and tight, and like I said, has to be soaked, because you don't want to experience any buckling. Keeping everything smooth and tight. I'm going to try to clip it towards the front of the hairline, as that's where the shorter hairs seem to be. And that way I can keep them secluded in the clip. So really gathering all this hair. And just secure that. You may need 2 clips. Okay, so now that we've got the top sectioned away from the rest of the hair, I haven't clipped away this portion, which is the crown, because Lucy is trying to achieve more of a mullety look per se. The back end is supposed to be a little bit heavier than the rest of the hair. Because we're maintaining length, I don't need to reserve this part for anything, because I'm just going to create a square layer in the back, which will help me create more weight towards the back. This haircut starts in the back, so I'm just going to section out from top of the head to the back of the ear to separate the 2 sections near the front. So grooming those out of the way. Like so. And remembering to hold the center of your comb to maintain control. grooming every single hair in place. Now that everything is sectioned, I can begin to start my haircut. Tilting the model's head forward, we're going to begin by taking a finger width section through the top of the head to the nape. Again, holding the center of my comb, placing the rest of the hair that I've parted away from my subsection off to the side. Now, before I take my first subsection, I'm going to place my index finger my middle finger just behind the first subsection. This will help me control my subsection without bleeding into these side panels that I've groomed away from my first section. So placing my middle finger right here, I'm going to grab my comb just in the center and just flick off my middle finger. And this is going to help me control my sections. So like I said, square layer, coming 90 degrees from the head. Splitting that in half and continuing down the head. As you get to the nape area, it does begin to get tricky. So your best friend will be moisture. So always keeping a spray bottle handy. You go back and soak the rest of her hair. Continuing through the occipital. Placing my finger beside the section, grooming those hairs away, straight up from the head. Maintaining that square shape. Holding my comb in the center, I'm just scooping that last part of the section. Again, this is where it gets tricky. Trying to keep everything at 90 degrees. And because she has a lower hairline, I'm going to begin to come in the opposite way. Just to pull that connection up. So moving on, I'm going to start with my left panel. I'm going to comb everything down. I'm going to take my next section, again like a finger's width. I'm going to take part of my first subsection along with me. So splitting that in half and parting it over. Straight out from the head, checking my previous guide, 90 degrees. Splitting that section in half. Grooming to the right. Taking my next section, combing down. everything at 90. As I get to the sides of the head, it begins to get a little bit tricky because I begin to lose a little bit of length. Staying in line with my subsection, not over directing, coming straight up from the head. I'm just wrapping up this back quadrant. And that just about wraps up the left side. Moving on to the right. Pushing all the hair that I've just cut aside, so I can begin the right section. Again, taking a finger width section, grooming all the hair aside, so I could really focus on what I need to. Placing my finger just beside the parting, and a scoop. Because this nape area is so hard to grasp, especially when the hair is wet and straight, always remember to tilt your client's head downwards. Try to always make your client accommodate you in your comfort. As I wrap up the back area, a lot of this hair is not making it to my guideline, which is great, which means I don't really need to cut any more hair. So I'm gonna comb this all down. I'm gonna begin to cross-check. Because I cut this vertically, I'm gonna approach my cross-checking horizontally. So by doing that, I'm gonna remember that I took my sections straight at the head at 90 degrees. So that means when I'm cross-checking, each subsection that I take horizontally should come out to the same area that I brought it out in the first place. So I'm gonna begin to comb this to the side. Because I am taking horizontal sections and combing it to the side does make that easier. And I'm gonna take my first section and just roughly scoop it and bring it out. And now I'm just checking if everything is even. Cross-checking is a very, very, very crucial part of your haircut. If this isn't done, the rest of your haircut could come out exactly how you didn't want it to end up. And you may be doing things like wasting time when you're going back and correcting things that should have been done properly in the first place. So I could see that I left some length here. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Perfect. Moving on. So the sides are a little bit of a different approach. Because Lucy wanted somewhat of a modernized mullet, I'm going to have to use a little bit of round graduation through the sides so that I can keep the sideburn nice and tight. Because I'm probably going to implement a little bit of a taper using a clipper, nothing crazy, a little bit soft, but I'm going to show you how to convert diagonal sections into a square layer. Combing everything down, I'm going to begin by wetting the hair. Tilting Lucy's head off to the side. I'm going to scoop that little hair that I can see disrupting my section on the side, as it seems as though it belongs to the top, and whenever that happens to you, always stop and place those hairs where they need to be. You don't need to be cutting hairs that you actually need to have length. So taking my first section, going diagonally, a little bit of moisture. Holding my center of the comb, scooping that upwards. So I have some hairs that are at the highest point of this section. When I do see a bit of longer hairs getting interfered, I tend to curve my fingers outwards so that I can maintain length in those areas. And this part is really where it starts to connect to the back, because a little bit of this section is part of this area right here. So being very mindful of that and just trimming the longer length. Keeping my fingers parallel to the parting. Coming in on a diagonal. Just removing the weight just behind the ear, so that's about where it connects. And holding that that section, scooping upwards. Checking for my guide. Sweet. Now this is the part where we start to curve our partings a little bit more vertically. Because we're starting at a diagonal, I'm trying to slowly transition to square. So what I'm about to do is start to straighten out my partings by taking almost like a 45-degree angle. And again, scooping from underneath. And just blending my cross grad. So I'm essentially doing this so I become vertical again and run out of hair. As you can see, I'm almost at the vertical point. So this might be my last diagonal section. And there it is. So we wrap up this side. I should have little to no hair to cut. And then I take a last section just to double check that no hair can make it. So you might end up with some unnecessary weight. And that completes side A. Moving on to side B. Okay, now working with side B. Again, connecting diagonally until I end up vertically. I'm gonna start just by the sideburn. Use some moisture. And just as a tip, never begin a cross graduation with not enough moisture. Moisture is key for any haircut, really. Again, beginning to go square. Trying to maintain length as much as possible. There's a little bit of too much weight over here. That can go. And taking my last section. It's really just connecting everything. Awesome. So now we've completed the back and sides. I'm going to move on to cutting the top. So removing the clip, obviously adding moisture. Now, because we're actually going for more of a disconnected look, really nothing is really coming off the top. We're just using this square layer, the first subsection I took, as a guide just so that I know where I'm standing in the back. Just so I don't cut off too much. This subsection in the back always reassures me that I haven't gone too far. This is what I call the safety. So I always leave that there for accessibility. I'm just gonna go ahead and take a finger width section through the top and begin my first guide. Again, using that as a guide, bringing everything up to a square, 90 degrees. Using that as my shortest point, and that's obviously my guide, cutting straight across. And drop it. Hold it, and pull the next section. Never taking sections too wide. Too wide for my fingers, that is. I want to cut my fingers. I'm picking up the last piece. Right. Moving on. Taking that first guideline with me, grooming all the hair aside. Coming straight out from the head. Still carrying that guide with me. Going to the end of the section. Everything out square. 90 degrees. Go straight across. So as we approach the end of the top section, you're probably going to run out of hair, but that's okay, because we're trying to leave as much length on top as possible, because that's really going to accentuate this look. Degrees and cutting whatever's left off the guide. Moving on to the right side of the top section. Going back and cleaning out the area that I was working on, really making sure that my sections are still intact. It's very important to me as it helps plan my design better. Very important to know discipline. Now wrapping up the right side. I should have little to no hair to cut. Just little scragglers. Make sure to clean those up. That basically concludes the haircut. The rest of the cutting that is involved in this haircut is mostly texturizing. The way to achieve this look is mainly in the dry cutting with a feather razor and a little bit of texturizing shears. But today I'm going to use a little bit of a point cutting technique to demonstrate that. So I'm using a L'Oreal Transformer Texture Cream. It's a liquid paste that starts off as a malleable liquid product. And as you start to spread it and dry it into the hair, it starts to swell and turn into an actual matte paste. So I'm gonna start by squirting a little bit of all of 2 pumps into my hand. Massaging it into my hands and letting the fibers click onto the hair. And then beginning to distribute starting in the back. The reason I start in the back is because wherever you start is where the most product's gonna be. Meaning that area could be heavy or greasy. So always start in the back and then start to distribute to the sides and the top. And you want to distribute through the whole head, as this whole look matters to you. Really just throwing the product in until it's no longer in your hands. Be very generous. And begin your blow dry. So I'm going to begin by removing most of the moisture from Lucy's hair. So I feel like I'll be working here forever trying to dry it by using a brush. Right now I feel that the hair is too wet to use a brush. So you want to work on really just drying the hair about 80% of the way. That will also help create a little bit of texture for your modernized mullet, especially through the back. Coming backwards to create volume, really shaking up the roots. Now you can begin to pop a nozzle on your dryer and start to smooth it out. This is where I tend to get really picky. I find that I can do a blow dry all day and the back still won't get dry. So I tend to come right in the bottom of the nape and start scraping upwards. And that will help me achieve a little bit of volume in the back. Not that I really need it, but it helps me create a little bit of texture. So now that Lucy's hair is dry, I can actually see the shape that I was trying to create. Tighter in through the sides, and crazy and happening in the back. Lots of texture, but still tight in the nape. Now we're going to begin a little bit of detailing. This is where most of the action happens and where this haircut really comes to life. I find that Lucy's hair is very thick and it's hard to see the edginess with an edgy haircut. So I'm just going to go in and start to point cut in the areas I feel are super dense. So combing everything down so I can see where my weight is specifically. I can see it's probably in these areas right here. Not so much on the bottom. So I'm going to begin to take section through the back. I'm going to start picking up the areas I feel roughly, not being too technical, bringing it outwards and just cutting into it. Next piece. You're literally creating the edginess as you go. You can see there's thick cutting lines, very solid cutting lines, and we just want to break that up. And as you can see, it's already happening on the side. And the reason I keep shaking it up is because that's how I style it. So I'm trying to put together a haircut as I go. So I can see how much longer it will take until I achieve the look that I want. Always bending it outwards just so that you can accommodate the angle of your scissors. Texturizing doesn't have to be cut at a certain point. It could be whatever you want it to be, just don't overdo it. Now I'm going to pay more attention to the top as I see that it's starting to flop in her face a little bit, meaning it's a little too heavy. Taking my next section, scooping, just examining the thickness and just cutting into it. This especially matters because Lucy's hair is so straight. All right, so now on the side, I'm just going to, as you can see, I've sectioned off the top area of the head so I can focus on the sideburn because I'm going to add in a little bit of a taper and I don't want this hair to interfere and possibly get cut off. So I'm just gonna slightly tilt her head using the back of my hand, starting with the number 3, just flicking off the sideburn hair. Now I'm going to take a number 1 and add in a little bit of a fade. Point 5, 1, 0. I actually blended a 1.5 into a 3 because I didn't want a drastic fade. I was able to just use my number 1 to sort of flick into the 3 and make it look natural. Then I can refine that with a little bit of scissor over comb. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Point 5, 1, and 0. I'm just going in and refining that a little bit. If I'm fading a small area, I always pull down this area of the skin. It actually helps me get a really tight area to work with and helps me create a smooth blend in this area without digging too deep into my haircut. So remember, always stretch the skin. That concludes the clipper work. Now I'm going to go in and blend with a little bit of scissor over comb. Tilting Lucy's head to the side, going in on the wide side and just kind of removing some of the weight on her sideburn. Nothing too crazy, just a little soft touch to help blend everything in. Same thing on this side. Remembering to move longer hair out of the way. So now because the sideburns have a little bit of fade detail, I am going to line up just that area. The rest of the back and sides really don't need to be lined up because this is the action I'm kind of looking for, texture. So going in, just carving out the sideburn, just slightly. Moving my way to the front, trying to create an arch. I'm gonna pull this hair down and just remove it so I can make my lineup pop a little bit more. And just creating a soft curve around her face. And moving on to the other side. Same thing, pulling all the unwanted hair down. And this is just excess weight that might interfere with my lineup. Just pencil in that arch. And then come around the bend. Line it up. And then clean up this area just by the ear. Just to create a cleaner look. Right, haircut's almost complete. How I would finish off this haircut is by using a texturizing shear. Looks like this. So I'm gonna go into the nape of the hair and really create a natural effect by piecing this up. You can go in pretty deep depending on the thickness of the hair. And right away you begin to see the softness that you're able to achieve from this technique. And don't be afraid to grab a few pieces and pull them out and really get creative with it. This is like my favorite part because you can really see the haircut come to life. And this just helps the hairs on the neck become a little bit more wispy. Because I like it pretty pressed on her neck, I try to get in pretty deep with the feather razor. So for the hairs just beneath this cutting line, I'm gonna lift them up slightly and I can start to reveal a little bit of neck hair. So I'm gonna go in with my trimmer and remove that. The reason I'm removing these hairs is because I find that it pushes on the neck hairs that I wanna leave flat and ends up creating volume and lifting them upwards. Pushing all the hair up, revealing the neck hair, and scraping lightly, just flicking outwards so you create like a feathering effect. And then when you come to the ends of the hair, just point cut to clean this up. Tremendous shape, crazy. All right, now comes the styling. So I'm gonna go ahead and run my fingers through Lucy's hair, really shake it up, get crazy. I might even grab my blow dry, remove all the loose hairs. You always wanna use cooler air when you do this. It helps cool a client after a session, as well as remove any loose hairs that may fall out when they leave your chair and fall on their clothes and such. So make sure it's clean, clean, clean. No hairs on the face. Now I'm just gonna line this up with my straight razor. Using my thumb just beside her eye, pushing outwards. I come in with my straight razor and just push on this sideburn a little bit. Lucy's quite fair and doesn't need a lot of straight razor attention. It's merely just to create sharp lines. Now I'm going to remove this cape and just kind of clean up her neck. Get rid of the neck strip, lift any hairs that may get in the way. Just lightly scrape for a dry shave. All right, and that concludes the haircut. So for a quick breakdown, we started off with a square layer in the back, starting in the center with a section a finger's width down the center to the nape. We did diagonal sections through the sides and converted them into square sections, and then did square on top, leaving us with a modernized mullet with a soft taper. We also blended it, use a 3 and a 1.5. Now, quickly, just on the back here, I did emphasize on using a feather razor on the back because we do want to consider that she is a female and wants a probably more softer neckline, okay? So using a feather razor will help you achieve that and help create soft feminine lines.